What's up, y'all? I'm just making a very quick video. I don't even know if y'all can hear me that well, but I'm making a very quick video on just a project car that I found back in March 2017. This thing was on Craigslist. It's a 1965 Chrysler New Yorker. It was on Craigslist for $2,000. It came with some spare parts and everything, and I decided that I would purchase it just because, I mean, this isn't, by the way, this isn't my first car. Technically, I've had 4 cars, technically, just because my first car was a 66 New York, or not New Yorker, sorry, Newport. And that was a 4-door hardtop. This is a 2-door hardtop. But it was a 4-door hardtop. And after that, I had a 1970 New Yorker that was a 4-door hardtop, and I traded that to a guy we know down where I live for a 1961 Willys, which that actually is at the same location, but it's just in the garage, and I'm not gonna make a video on it right now, but sorry for the shaky camera. Anyway, as you can see, it's a, again, 65 New Yorker. It has the glass over the headlights. And this model and I think the 300 both had the glass covers, and the Imperials of this year had the glass over the headlights. The Newports did not. Now, in the Imperials, these may have been gold. I'm not sure. I really can't tell if this is gold or not. I mean, if it is, it's only like freaking $30 worth of gold. It's not really even that much, but I mean, still for 1965, I mean, it's pretty peppy in its day. But as you can see, I'll open the hood and show you the engine in here. Now, this engine, for whatever reason, has been a phenomenal engine despite what condition it appears to be in. It is a great engine. It does not, you know, when you work on old cars, some of them, you know, even when you just freshly change the oil, it still within a week starts to turn brown and yucky looking. Well, with this one, it does not do that. So whoever owned this car, well, I know who owned it before me, but the original owners who owned it before the guy I bought it from, he never got to meet him, because this thing was rescued. Part of its story is this car was rescued at a junkyard in 2002. They were literally about to drain all the fluids and crush it when the guy got there to the junkyard, and he had said that he would be interested in buying it. Now, can you believe someone was really going to crush this car for freaking, I don't know, $600–700 worth of scrap at the most? Kind of freaking ridiculous, especially for nowadays when you look back on it. But anyway, we repainted the rocker covers, we repainted the brake booster, the master cylinder, changed it to a dual reservoir. As you can see, that's the thing we did. I also, when we first got the car, I bought a new battery. That was expensive, by the way. Anyway, so as for the carburetor, oh, that's an interesting story. So for the carburetor, it originally came with like 2 extra carburetors, but none of them really seemed to be working properly, especially the original Carter carburetor that was on here. Now, I gave my dad a few car parts that were not specifically for a 65 Chrysler, and in return he gave me a working original 4-barrel Carter carburetor, which is what's on there now. Can't really see it that good, but interesting thing is if you're familiar with these old cars, now in 1962, in the early 60s, for Chryslers, this right here was bent downward. So when you stepped on the gas, it would be down here, and all this system would be further down here. Now in 65, they switched to having it up here, and this was originally from a 66 or 67 Chrysler, so it was originally bent like this. Then my dad decided to put it on a 64, so he heated it up, bent this piece down, and then when he gave it back to me, we had to go through the process of bending it back up in order to get this thing situated properly. But that's just, you know, a little side story. But anyway, we can go look at the interior. But oh, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but this is a 413 Chrysler engine. This was the last year, I think, that they offered the 413, because I think the 440 came out either this year or the next year. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was 66. I'm almost certain it was, but I saw some 65 Dodge that said it had a 440. They may have just put the trim on there, but anyway. That's actually probably what they did, because it only had a 413 in it anyway. As for the interior of this land yacht, the interior is nice. It has black steering wheel. It has the nice chrome with the fake wood. You have your wipers, your lights, high beam switches down there, of course, as they all are, and then it does have power windows. Now, one thing to note about these power windows is that in 65, the window motors, they were rubbery, like the gears inside of there were rubber, and sometimes they would shear, or not the gears, but like where the gear, it's kind of weird. It basically is the gear, but it's part of the gear. Part of it's metal, part of it's rubber, and the metal part sheared off from the rubber part, and this window just clunked down in there, and we had to remove all this paneling, and that was, boy was that fun. Anyway, that was a pain, so I'm thinking on switching this out to a crank window. I'm not sure anyone in the comments knows how hard that would be. Let me know, because I honestly don't know much about switching stuff with windows from power to crank. I'd prefer to have crank windows, honestly, so you don't have to deal with the old motors failing and all the stupidity, but anyway, that you got to deal with sometimes. It's nice to have them when they work, but when they don't work, it's a pain in the ass. But as you can see, that's the speedometer. I have the keys. I'm not going to turn it on because I meant to mention it when the hood was open, but the ballast resistor, you know anything about cars, I'm sure you know what that is. The ballast resistor is broken. There's the oil light, or it's not really broken, but the ballast resistor is worn out, so we got to find a new one for it. And again, that's the oil check light, and as you can see, it has its original radio still. Does not work. I'm looking for a AM FM radio, so that way I can play FM, because even if this radio worked, the only thing I'd be able to get on it is like Mexican channels. Now, sometime I need to make a video at night of the interior of this thing, because this thing is lit up, and I mean really, like the dash and even the cigarette trays, you really can't see it right now, they don't have it on, but up in there underneath, you see that right there, that little dot right there, that is actually a light where I think, yeah, that is the light. That's where this thing has lights to where if you're smoking and it's nighttime, literally the light shines down into the ashtray and everything is like all glow, a greenish hue. It's really, really beautiful. Now, this is not original right here. This is just some 1980s freaking cup holder thing that I put in here that my dad got for his 54 Ford back when he got it in college, and then he just gave me this thing. It's just something that you can sit stuff in, which is kind of handy. As you can see, this is the back seat. The lights do work on both sides. That one's missing a cover. That one has its cover, but that one's missing it. I have spare covers, I just haven't bothered freaking putting it in because I've been kind of lazy on the interior. But anyway, as you can see, these are genuine leather seats. A couple months ago, before I left for the mountains during the summer, we had totally removed these seats, and there was a spot when this thing was sitting in the junkyard for about 2 months. Mice had gotten in it and peed behind the seat, like in the trunk. There's where you can actually get to right behind the seat. There's actually a lot of room back in there in that one little gap, but they got back in there and they peed and stuff, and so it started rusting. It wasn't real bad. I mean, it was just surface rust. I mean, everything, all the rust that was even on this car when we got it was just surface rust. But I took a wire brush the hell out of the under here where just the metal is, and then repainted it just because I didn't like having the rust on there. Now, something interesting to note about these old 65s is that the tail lights were really, really different for the New Yorkers than any other car. Normally on a 65, these would have been solid red. This isn't. I think I don't know if it was an early 60s Cadillac that had a similar design to this, but it actually has, at first I thought they were actually red light bulbs, and I was like, well, where in the hell am I going to get fucking red light bulbs to put back into this thing? And what it is it's actually clear light bulbs with a plastic bulb cover, so it looks like a light bulb, but it's actually not. And then this. The downside to these are that they're very, very dim at night. You really can't see them that well, and so I think later on in the 65 model year, they decided to switch all the Chryslers to having the red plastic paneling on the taillights. Now, I'll show you inside the trunk. The trunk's pretty messy, but I'll show you in there anyway. Because we are having issues with wiring on this car, which I am very familiar with. 65 and 66. If you have one, you'll know they had wiring issues. Hold up. There we go. Trunk's stuck a little bit, but that's all right. As you can see, yes, my trunk is basically a shit pile right now, but anyway, that's the toolbox. Everything else, I mean, this thing's massive. This is like stupidly, ridiculously huge trunk. I mean, once we had this thing all taken out and everything, all the stuff taken out, you literally could put probably like 4 people could hide in this trunk or something. It's ridiculous. And then further back, you can see back there, there's a spot over that. There's a hump right there, and then there's even more space back in there. But well, I'm not gonna do that right now. But so all in all, it's a great car. I mean, I've always liked Chryslers. Generally, we stick with 50s and early 60s Chryslers, but this was on Craigslist for, again, extremely cheap. And the guy had gotten like 30 messages. Oh yeah, I want to turn that into a demolition derby car, and I want to turn that into a freaking race car and destroy it, and da 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 da. And so when we sent an email to make an offer on it, I told him that I was not going to put it in a demolition derby. I was going to restore it and everything, which I'm still thinking on either offering to sell it back, because I mean, the guy he admitted he misses this car. I mean, he said if I ever think about selling it, to let him know. So if I decide to sell it for late 50s, very early 60s Chrysler 2-door, to let him know. Now, if I decide to trade it, that's the thing about trading. I've offered several people to trade, but I've had several people also contact me saying, oh, I'll trade you this 1960 Chrysler rusty 4-door post car for your really nice 65 New Yorker 2-door coupe. And I was like, I was not born yesterday. This thing is worth well more than a 4-door post. But anyway, that's the car. I'll get a side shot of it real quick. But, and again, this is actually the car that I've had the longest. The other cars I really didn't have that long, maybe a few months, and then I didn't really like it that much, and then I'd trade it or sell it. And then I had the 61 Willys, and I decided to give that to my grandfather, and then we decided to get another car because I didn't have one at the time, because I had given it to my grandfather as a project car, the 61 Willys anyway. So I've had this one for about a year now, or over a year and several months now, but that'll probably about do it for this video. I'm just going to make a video on, I do have the antenna, by the way, it's just I don't have it in there for being able to cover it up. But anyway, that'll about do it for this video. I just wanted to show y'all, if any of you are interested in old cars, I'm sure you'd appreciate it, and I'll see y'all later.